If you're enjoying Gems with Shom, follow the show. We're just getting started. Welcome to Gems with Shom, a show about beat digging, records, and other things. Today, I'm joined by John Morrison. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Yo, Shom, thank you for having me, bro.
Appreciate your time, brother.
For sure.
You are a writer, a DJ, a beat maker from Philadelphia. You've been featured in NPR, Spin Magazine, Complex, and other publications. You've also authored your own books. I knew we'd have a great discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, did you grow up in Philadelphia?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm from Philadelphia, born and raised. I grew up, Philly folks know when I meet somebody out in the world and they say, oh, you from Philly? If they're from Philly, they ask what part. I say, I'm from Uptown. So Uptown is the cluster of neighborhoods in like the northwestern section of the city, West Oak Lane, Germantown, and Mount Airy. Those neighborhoods are collectively known from Black Philadelphians. We collectively call that Uptown, and I'm from West Oak Lane.
Thanks for sharing that. Philly has a great music culture and DJ culture, and I've had a lot of great Philadelphia representatives on this show.
Yeah.
And Scheme Richards, great guy, great supporter. He explained a little bit about the geography, so that was a good reminder. So, growing up in Philly, musical hotbed, culture hotbed. What were you observing growing up in your early stages?
Yeah. So I didn't really realize this. When I was a younger person, I used to say, oh, I didn't really grow up in a musical household, but I was 1,000% incorrect about that. And I'll explain.
How time works, right?
Yeah. Once your perspective changes a little bit. So my mom, I would shout my mom out in those early days, like talking about my childhood and music, because my mom sang pop music, but she also sang opera as a kid. So she was like super musical, always sang around the house. And I'll get to my older brother last. But the reason why, or one of the reasons why I didn't really have an understanding of the musical heritage that I had is because my father passed away when I was really young. So I was about 8 years old when my father was killed. And
sorry to hear that.
Thank you, man. Like naturally, something like that happening, I didn't know a lot about his life or him as a young man or like his interests or anything like that. I didn't inherit a lot of records from him, so I couldn't even like go through and be like, oh, my pop's like this, he like that. It just wasn't there. But maybe when I was in my late 20s, my uncle Nate, my father's brother, he hit me up and he's like, nephew, I want you to DJ a party for me. So it was a reunion kind of thing for like his old baseball team. It was in North Philly, which both sides of my family are from North Philly, like Nicetown area. And we were doing a reunion at this old baseball park. So I pulled up knowing my uncle and knowing his generation. I'm like, okay, I got to play Philly International, old Philly soul, some disco, like that sort of thing. I knew what the vibe was supposed to be. So I pulled up. This is when I was doing a lot more like mobile DJing. So I had speakers, and I'm like playing the music and it's cool. Nice, fun day. So at the end of the event, I'm taking my speakers down, I'm packing up, and I'm chatting with my uncle. And he's like, nephew, me and your dad used to do what you do. So I'm like, tell me more. You know what I'm saying? So he told me that my father and his brothers had a party promoting crew called the Mad Hatters. This is in the 70s at the height of like Gamble and Huff, Philly International, all of that stuff, disco. And they would do events all around the city. So I didn't know any of this stuff. So I started doing a little more research, got a couple names of venues that they would throw parties at. And this was years ago, many years ago that I found this out, but I'm still piecing together this story of how my father and his brothers were involved in Philly's party culture, DJ culture, and all of that. So that's a whole big component. You talk about growing up, that's a whole big component of the music and the musical lineage that I didn't understand because, like I said, I lost my father so young. But then the final piece of it, thinking about growing up and what I was absorbing, my older brother is 11 years older than me, and he was a producer. Like, I literally remember being a little kid coming home, and him and his homeboy, DJ Threat, they would have like TR 909s, 808s set up in our house, just like making beats. So once I started expressing like interest in music, my older brother was the one that taught me. He would hand me records and he would play me, say, something like Audio 2 Top Billin'. He would play that, and then I would take the drums, chop the drums, and recreate that drum pattern. So that's kind of how I learned to make music, was by listening and my older brother showing me the machines. So by the time I was like 13, I could MIDI up your studio. You know what I mean? Like when kids in my school would get like little like secondhand pieces of gear, like a synthesizer, a drum machine or whatever, they would bring their machines to school. And I'm like 14. They would bring their machines to school. I would take them home for the night, learn the machine, and then write them like a manual and give them the machine back so that they could learn it, like a manual that a kid could understand so that they could learn it. So I had all of this musical stuff, background, that I wasn't super sure or it wasn't like really with my father. I wasn't really knowledgeable about how deep he went in with the music, but my mom and my older brother were like my North Stars with music.
Really glad to hear that. It's something, let's say, challenging that happened at an early stage, and then you kind of look back and you find these puzzle pieces that made it central for you. I mean, it's a big part of your life. Probably gives you great joy.
Yeah. And it makes me feel like I'm not just doing stuff. You know what I mean? Like, which I don't really feel, but it does make me feel more grounded and connected.
Yeah, it's an added meaning, added
For sure.
rationale. Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I think it's a really cool story, and a lot of that's on you too. You found this purpose and meaning that makes it more serious to you, more meaning. Not everyone would do that, right? Not everyone even looks for these puzzle pieces. So I think that's great that you find this kind of joy in it all.
For sure.
Now, you're in early stages of high school. You're exposed to music production, earlier stage of hip hop, and you're starting to get your hands dirty with machines, probably sampling equipment, keyboards, things like that. Is that when you started making music more of a focus for yourself?
So I've been a lifelong hobbyist with making music. Super serious about the craft and the energy and focus that I put into it. But I didn't have like aspirations of being like a famous musician or anything like that. It was really the culture that I was in, growing up in Philly in the 90s, you know what I mean? Really like 80s was when I got introduced to like seeing hip hop being made and all of that through my older brother. Just on one quick note too, my brother was in a group, or he was in the group, he was like the producer, called the Devastating Four. And this was like 87, 88. So I was like 6 or 7 years old. I would see my older brother like perform on stage. He would bring the drum machine on stage and do the beats live while the MCs rapped. So I had that example of young people, slightly older than me, being creative and like diving deep into hip hop. So when I was a teenager, my entry point into actually making music was MCing. So a lot of what I did from, you know, junior high all the way through adulthood was MCing and also like battling. Like battling was like my, that was like my thing. I was like crazy for battling, like literally like running up on people. Like you hear some kid like raps in the neighborhood. So you run up on him like, yo, you rhyme? It's like, yeah. It's like, all right, you want to battle? You know what I mean? Like that was my thing in school, out of school. Me and a good friend of mine, my man Tommy Guns, we used to have a group called the Upstarts, and we would like go to different neighborhoods and battle. We battle grown men, battle kids. You know what I mean? This is like all off the head. This is in like the off the head era. And Philly in the 90s had a super, super competitive battle culture and MC culture. And that was like my thing. So that's how I started making music, was like writing rhymes. I had this background through my older brother who was teaching me how to make the music. So I would record in my house. I would have other kids come over and make little like beat tapes for them to listen to, and then like record on like I started with a karaoke tape deck with like a microphone and like the little echo. You could you could turn up like the echo on it. But then a friend in the neighborhood gave me a 4-track recorder, I think like a Vestax 4-track. So I had that and like a DJ mixer and some like janky turntables. And I would make little like mixtapes or make tapes of me rapping with other kids in the neighborhood, or, tapes of like songs that I like that I would make for my homies. So it was, a lot of it was play. Like it was like creative play that really, I think, informed to this day like how I make music, how I write about music, how I DJ, all that stuff, that I did back in the day as a kid is kind of set the tone for what I do now.
You're doing a lot of things. And in Philly, these things, some of the best musicians, rappers, freestylers, producers in the world,
Yeah,
especially at that stage when
for sure.
rap was a little smaller, right?
Yeah,
And especially the freestyle scene in Philadelphia was really well known, kind of popularized by how crazy the Roots were and Black Thought. And
yeah,
yeah, they were kind of taking it to another level.
yeah.
Now, let's go back to those battle days, those freestyle days. What are we talking? You're a teenager, maybe 16, 15 kind of range?
Yeah, 14, 15, 16. But I was battling kids in junior high too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're early. And it seems like I mean, it's part of the culture where you're growing up. You're
for sure.
in the middle of this important phase of hip hop.
Yeah,
Now, when you're in these battles and parts of Philly, most of Philly is really nice. Parts can be tough too, right? Let's
yeah,
be frank, right? There's no doubt about it, right?
for sure.
Take us into the mentality of the teenage you.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind?
You know, um, I was a performer as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, and on a lot of levels, like, I started in the church. Well, I jumped past the church stuff, but um, the first time I like publicly performed for people in church, I might have been like 2 or 3. You know what I mean? So I, even to this day, like, I just did a conference in LA last week. I was out there for PopCon, and I was thinking about this. We were like setting up on stage. There's like people there about to watch us speak, and I just kind of thought about how I don't get nervous. Really, like performing doesn't like, or being on stage doesn't make me nervous. I'm like, oh, it's because you were conditioned from when you were little. So that's something that I brought to battling as a teenager. Um, I knew how to get, how to kind of like turn it on for crowds. And that's a lot of it was like I've done like organized battles too. We have like a panel of judges. That was stuff I was doing more so as an adult. And they pick who wins or whatever. But a lot of it was on the street with a bunch of other people, and whoever got the crowd reaction won the battle. You know what I mean? So as far as mentality, I was it was kind of like you ever see a comedian when they're on stage and they just go around the front row and just like rank on people like, oh man, look at your shoes. Your mom's so fat she jumped in the air and got stuck. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Um, that was like my orientation. Like I was like scanning people and reacting to what they were saying. It was fun talking about it. I haven't talked about this in like forever. But that's what it was. A lot of it was like uh trying to say something to embarrass the other person, to be honest, or like to get that crowd reaction, or impress, in the case of like a small battle where it's just like a few of us, impress the other people in the room. You know what I mean? I was just thinking about this battle in particular. Um, Me and my man Tommy Guns that I mentioned, we used to rap together when we were kids. Tommy lived on the block behind me, and Malik B's mom lived on that same block. So if you go to my mom's house right now and you look behind her house, like through her backyard, you can see Malik B's mom's house right there. So I know Malik forever. Also, rest in peace, like one of the greatest freestylers I've ever rhymed with in life. But I remember one day we were hanging out with him. I was probably like 15. Tommy might have been 14. And he's like, yo, I want to take y'all to my homie's house. My homie make beats. And this is like when the roots were like popping. Like it shows you how much uh Malik loved the craft. Why are you just like ciphering? Like he would come around the way and just cipher with MCs, like set off a cipher because he just loved rhyming like that. So he took me and Tommy to his homie's house who made beats. I can't remember his brother's name, but I feel like I remember him using the ASR. So any Philly people who use the ASR who might be watching this, maybe it was you, I don't remember. But I remember Malik had us battle for like an hour straight off the top. Like we would go, I would go around, Tommy would go around, he would go around, and we would just be going back and forth, and Malik would be like, yo, go again, go again, go again. And he would call you out if you use like something that sounded written, or if it was a written, he'd be like, yo, you wrote that? So it had to be like all off the top. And I remember us being in this basement and homeboys like playing beats, and Malik is just like, go again, go again. And that's just battling for an hour off the top to a standstill. You know what I mean? But that's the culture that, those folks who were slightly older than us, that's what they were doing. I got to interview Black Thought many years later, and he told me that when he met Malik at Millersville University, one, he went to Millersville specifically to battle Malik. He had a scholarship to go to Temple, but he, instead of going to Temple, he went to Millersville because his cousin, Sean G, told him, yo, there's this guy named Malik that you can't beat in a battle. You can't fuck with him. So Black Thought was like, nah, fuck going to Temple. I got to go to Millersville. So he enrolled in Millersville and found Malik, and they battled for 3 hours straight in a laundry room at a party. So that's just to get it, to kind of paint a picture of what type time Philly was on back then. That was part of it. Like it was like off the head, battling, as my folks in California say, you can't duck a fade. Like if somebody come up to you like, yo, I'm trying to battle, you can't, niggas don't want to hear nothing from you if you ducked the battle last week. You know what I mean? Like you can't come back the next week like, yo, da 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 da. Nobody want to hear that. So that's not so much a part of what I do now, as a DJ and as a writer, but that's what I grew up in. Really, you know what I mean? That's really what it was.
When you're in your, let's say, you're rapping, you're in your zone, you're in your flow state, for lack of a better term. How are you feeling at that time?
So I have some insight on this. One, because I was doing it, but then also later in life, I became a meditator. So I discovered meditation and made it like a part of my everyday life. So when you're really going off the top and you're like going there and it's all connecting, you're not just saying like bullshit, like yo, when I come through, like when you're like really like going, um, it feels very similar. It's almost undescribable. It feels like being in a meditative state, whether you do, like mantra, meditations with mantras or not, you know what I mean, where you just, you just sit and kind of activate that state of mind and state of spirit. It feels very similar. You know what I mean? It also when you DJ and you're really connecting, that feels similar too. But sometimes when you're at home and you're just washing the dishes and you're not distracted, or you're just focused on what you're doing in that moment and being present, all that stuff feels the same. Like it I don't know how to describe what it feels like, but it makes you feel lighter. You know what I mean? You feel uh less weighed down by thoughts of the future and the past or anything like that. You're just there. You're like present in that moment. A lot of that stuff feels the same. Somebody who has a greater understanding of the practice of meditation or maybe neuroscience or whatever can explain it better than I can. But as a doer of those things, I understand it and I understand what it feels like.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things you said that I'd like to touch on. So firstly, on the meditating, I'm a heavy meditator. I
Yeah,
feel like it's significantly improved my life.
for sure.
With so much going on in the world these days, I mean, phones, everything like that, it is one of the best parts of my day.
Absolutely.
Now, I think some of the description of what was around you from a battle standpoint in Philadelphia, it explains a lot. I just knew about this reputation, and sometimes it seemed almost unbelievable how
Mhm.
good these guys were. It's like, can it really all be freestyle? And like, how goddamn good are these people, right?
Yeah,
Especially the Roots crew, especially Black Thought, who has gone on to be one of the all-time great rappers. Now, I have no idea if this is true. I was under the impression that the song Clones by the Roots was
mhm.
all freestyle. Then I think about it, is that possible? Like, how fucking good are these people?
I don't think it
Yeah.
was. I don't think that was a freestyle. Like, as you know, and you have better days and worse days in any discipline, any practice. Um, but knowing what those guys sounded like as freestylers in that period when they recorded that song, I don't think they freestyling it. I think they worked the pen with those records, especially like Clones and all that stuff. Yeah,
It's a goddamn like major single. They're on a record label. Like, who's
yeah.
freestyling, right? But those guys, everyone in that was also a known freestyle. Also, Dice Raw, crazy
Dice
freestyle.
Raw's crazy off the top and as a battler. Like Dice had a reputation before he was like Dice. You know what I mean? Like he was known in the city as a youngin who was like crazy on the mic. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was definitely an amazing era. It was mind blowing, really, how good they were overall. Right?
Yeah.
Whether Clones was a freestyle, or not, it doesn't matter. The fact that I considered that for decades is like, wow, that's fucking crazy.
Right.
Yeah, Roots, great group, big part of that era of hip hop culture and many other eras. I mean, they're
For sure.
still strong to this day. And it's interesting to observe them because they're totally different than they were when they came out as people. I mean, they're teenagers and then they're going through several albums with very different sounds,
Hmm.
a lot of great music on them. But they were not doing the same thing over and over. They were not a traditional hip hop group by any means.
No.
And then great live performers, which I think is the number one thing they can rely on. They could, throughout the decades, they're always performing, they always kill it.
Yeah.
And then they go and do late night show. And I'm like, wow, they're finding a new era. And for people who came from the underground, I think it's an important example because they're exploring new things and they're finding success in different ways. And that's how you have a 40-year career and you could say they're more famous today than they were when Illadelph came out.
They were a niche group.
Yeah.
Like even amongst, you know, you mentioned Illadelph when that record came out, it was 96. The underground and like mainstream hip hop, the underground sound and like the mainstream machine around the hip hop industry was a lot closer than, it was even a couple years later with like the raucous stuff and like Stone's Throw and all of that. There was less of a divide between, the attention that sonically and like culturally underground group like the Roots would get versus, a mainstream act or whatever. They were in the same magazines, all of that stuff. So yeah, it's they were a niche group that managed to survive, managed to navigate all of this stuff. It's remarkable to see them all these years later still doing it.
Yeah, it's a good lesson in life. And as let's just say, I don't know, I consider myself a person who likes underground things.
Yeah.
It's fair to watch people take a risk, even though it's not the same as before, and then see them be successful.
Yeah.
So I think that's the part that I'm trying to say, like, yeah, it's great music. It's very talented people massively, but they're going to totally different zones. And that's how they stay successful. And they're so good at making music. So it's, yeah, it's just something that maybe I wouldn't have appreciated when I was younger.
Oh, I remember when they made that announcement that they were doing the late night stuff, and people in my circle were like, folks who, were like not really in the music business, maybe like music business adjacent or whatever. I'm not saying that in a dismissive way, but people were mad. Like people were like, what? Like they're doing, you know what I mean? And, say what you will, they made their choice and they made their call. And my hope, I don't know any of them. Like I've met and worked with like some of those guys, but I don't, I'm not like in their circle or whatever. My hope is that they, get in the lab and make us like a good record, like a really good record. That's what I want to see. I know that the economics around that has like changed, and who the hell wants to give Spotify a record in this era, you know what I mean, where they're basically ripping musicians off. I only put music on Spotify if I make it through a label. But if I put something out myself, I don't put it on DSPs. I just sell it through Bandcamp. So I understand like the economics of it, but having grown up with them and knowing their music intimately like I do, I would love to see them give us a new record, like a killer record.
Yeah. More good music would be good.
Yeah.
I could foresee them having good music. I bet it will be different than where they started.
I mean, definitely.
So where did we leave off? We were in the freestyle era. We're talking about some of your experiences, some of your reflections on it. What happened next for you from a creative standpoint?
Yeah, so in high school, like my junior year of high school, that's when I started writing. It's a funny story. So I was cutting school and I came across a flyer. Just, how people would put up like flyers on like a telephone pole or whatever. And I saw this flyer advertising a documentary about hip hop in Japan. Like somebody in Philly had gone to Japan and like filmed all of this stuff, and they were doing a screening of this documentary. And at that point, this is like 98, 99. I was into like the DJ Crush album Meso. Like I love that record. It had like CL Smooth was on it. Speaking of the Roots, Black Thought and Malik B were on it. I used to play that record like obsessively from when it came out to even to this day. I still play it. So I knew about that. I knew about I can't think of the MC's names on Balloon Mind State who are like rapping in Japanese. And I think I had heard about the West Coast cats like Mystic Journeyman, like going to Japan and touring. So I knew there was a scene out there. So I was very excited. Like I was like, oh snap! Like I want to see a documentary about this. So I took the flyer. I called the numbers. Like for more information, call here. I called the number, and a guy named Ogbonna Higgins answered. He's a writer and an activist in Philly. And me and him are just talking. We're talking about music, and he's asking me like, "Yo, what do you listen to?" And I'm like 17, and I'm like, "Oh, Company Flow." And I'm like naming all this Sir Menelik, Octagon, like naming like all like underground rap that I was into. And he's like, "Yo, um, can you write? Like, do you know how to write?" And I'm like, "I know how to write rhymes." And he's like, "No, like not raps. Like, can you write like a record review?" And at that point, this is like 98, 99, I had been reading the Source magazine since like 89. You know what I mean? I used to steal my brother's copies when I was a little kid. And I had music journalists that I liked and that I liked their perspective. So I knew who Dream Hampton was, or like Selwyn Hines. I loved Reginald C. Dennis. You know what I mean? Greg Tate had a column in Vibe that I loved called Black Owned, where he would talk about like Sun Ra, like Afrofuturism, and all this different stuff, like a kind of like the cosmos of Black creativity. So I knew uh, I thought I knew what music writing was because I had read so much of it even as a kid. So I'm like, a record review? I was like, yeah, I could write a record review. So this guy, Obona, he brought me on as a contributor. He was starting a small local publication called the Philly Word, covering Philly's hip hop scene. And I worked with him, but he was also putting this together with Sheena Lester, the legendary hip hop journalist and editor. And Sheena was my first editor. I was a kid, you know what I mean? Like, and she was the first person to edit my writing and all of that. So, you know, I was MCing, I was making beats and like making like little mixtapes, like selling mixtapes and stuff. Um, but also that was my introduction to music journalism.
Amazing, amazing. I knew you were a journalist, and I like to have journalists on this show where possible because it's something that's underappreciated a bit. It's important in telling the story of the music I like. It's oftentimes better than the words I could find.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to borrow from some of that, let's just say, great writing and great communication. Because, I'm here. Any asshole could have a podcast, but I want to be able to elevate the music that I talk about and tell the stories in a great way. That's part of my motivation for having great writers like yourself.
Thank you.
So you started your journey into hip hop journalism. What was that like?
Yeah, so I started with record reviews, and the publication was local focused, but we also reviewed rap records from everywhere. You know what I mean? So I was reviewing like underground rap records, mainstream rap records that were coming out at the time, just like getting my reps up, just learning to listen and write critically about a piece of music, like not just passively think, oh, I like this, or I don't like this, like really dig into what aspects of the music I appreciated, what I didn't think worked as well. And I had a background in writing music, like writing rhymes, but also production, which is something that always helped because like I could listen to a record and be like, oh, that's a Bob James sample. Like I had that, as very young, like building my knowledge of like breaks and samples and stuff. So I could write about the music from a different perspective than other people my age. Cause I also used to write for like small, like punk zines, like, and I wrote about like a lot of punk and like metal and stuff like that, but mainly I would write about like hip hop stuff. But I had just humbly, I say I had like a little deeper connection to the music than some of my peers who were my age writing for like these small independent zines. Um So it was cool. And, I started writing record reviews, and then folks started hiring me to do like features. One of the first features I wrote, I interviewed, I think this wasn't for the Philly Word. I think this was for Public Enemy's website. Early internet days. Publicenemy.com had like an editorial arm where they would publish, like Chuck. Literally, I have a magazine right here that Chuck just put out, you know what I mean, through like the Public Enemy banner. So he's somebody who's been a supporter of music journalism forever. And my first paid gig was writing for publicenemy.com. So I did an interview with a Philly group. I don't know if you know these folks, but it's a Philly trio called the Mountain Brothers. And
Yeah. You're
say it again.
jogging my memory about the Mountain Brothers for sure. That was a long time ago and super underground.
Yeah, for sure. Like they had an EP with this song called Ain't Nothing, and this other song Optometry that was on it. I love that EP. And I can't even remember for the life of me who my editor was working with Public Enemy, but I pitched the story like, yo, this group in Philly, like I got to interview these guys. They're amazing. I think I saw them open for DJ Shadow. It was like DJ Shadow and J. Rue a couple years before. But I pitched the story, and they were the first group, any artist or whatever that I had interviewed. So I went to Chops from the Mountain Brothers. I went to his house in West Philly, and the three of us just like hung out. We're all like around the same age. So we just hung out and talked about music, and I asked some questions. Right after that, I interviewed Diggable Planets in Philly. So, I was just like young, learning the practice of interviewing people and writing about music critically. And that was it. I was just like, building up my skills and experience with music writing.
Any specific memories that stand out to you that are especially, let's say, interesting or noteworthy to you?
Yeah. A lot. I remember interviewing Diggable Planets, and they were rehearsing for a show, and we were
First
in
album or second album?
this was like after the second album. They had like done a show in Philly that was kind of like the reunion show, but I don't think they'd even broke up, but it was like oh, Diggable Planets, they haven't been around in a couple of years. Like this is a few years after the first album or after the second album. So I interviewed them in the control room of this studio. There's a studio / live venue in Philly called Milk Boy, and it's a really nice spot. But I tell people jokingly, like, yo, Milk Boy used to be in the hood. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I remember I brought two of my homies with me because it was a neighborhood I wasn't familiar with. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to be some shit like when we show up. You know what I mean? I don't know. So I brought two of my homeboys with me, and they hung out in like the rec room in the studio and were like playing pool. And I just interviewed Diggable Planets, and I was young, had like my little tape recorder. And I remember the band, while we did the interview, their band was rehearsing in the live room. So they're just playing like, Rebirth of Slick, what's the record? Knife Wonder, like don't. They're like playing that. Jetting, like all the stuff like from those two albums. The band is just like ripping through all of this stuff, just getting tight for this show. So yeah, that was dope. That was like a dope like early memory that I got to do that, because I absolutely adored Diggable Planets from like when they came out. And I've since like written a lot about them. I've wrote a piece for the American Poetry Review about Blowout Comb, kind of digging into the political, for lack of a better term, like political influences, like writing about Blowout Comb from like a political perspective specifically Black Marxism, and writing about how deeply communist and Marxist that record is, but it's also tied into Black cultural nationalism and all of that stuff. So, I've gotten to, from that early period of interviewing them, one of my first interviews, to now, I'm still engaging with that music.
That's really important because I think they're a very popular band. They're a very successful band. They're a very original band, and they had this political lens.
Yeah.
Now, in the world that we're in, I feel like there's a great opportunity for something like that to come back.
Yeah.
But that's really missing because not everyone is going to be Jay-Z. In fact, no one will be Jay-Z, right?
We already got one.
Right. And I'm not even going to give my opinion whether I agree with everything they say or not. It really doesn't matter. It's something that they're thinking about. They have a political viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
It represents a lot of people, and that it's completely absent now. And I would love for more political viewpoints in music, for it to be considered cool and interesting. And we're in a bit of a tough time economically, politically. A lot of the population is just kind of left out of whatever they thought success would be.
Yeah.
And I was listening to an interview with Rakim, one of my favorite rappers, one of the greatest rappers of all time.
Same.
They asked him, how do you feel the fact that every best rapper that came after you is ultra wealthy? Jay-Z's ultra wealthy, right? Nas is also ultra wealthy.
For sure.
And he's like, I don't care about that. All of that is the material. That is not what I'm focused on.
Yeah.
Yes, more money is better than less money. Don't get me wrong.
For sure.
But I'm focused on what I have in front of me and what's in my mind. And the fact that he said that today, I think is really significant because he could be unable to sleep at night.
Could be bitter, yeah.
Right? And he was talking about how he's like painting his garage and he likes to keep his house nice and he leads a good life with his family.
I love that.
Right? And he's treated as a legend. He's very famous, but he's not a billionaire. Who gives a shit? He's Rakim. I mean, this is the God MC, one of the greatest people ever involved in music in my eyes.
For sure.
And so, yeah. And the reason why I'm saying this is part of me agrees with him, but that really is not the point. The fact that this viewpoint should exist at all would be great.
Yeah. We could stand, especially in mainstream rap, but honestly, underground rap too. Because I was talking about this on Facebook with a good friend of mine, genius science fiction writer named Alex Smith, who lives in Philly. He asked, what's our equivalent in hip hop to, Public Enemy or even like a Brand Nubian or whatever? These folks who had politics. A lot of musicians just don't even, have any politic in their music at all. And we were all talking about it on this post that he made. And, I was thinking about it later. There really hasn't been space made for that kind of music. Like hip hop in particular was like deeply political when I was a kid. You could argue the points, like, what folks were saying and, whether you agree with it personally or not. But those folks, I grew up on Cube, Brother J, X-Clan, you know what I'm saying? Like those folks had a political perspective that was deeply tied to the music. Like you couldn't have that music in the way that you had it without their political perspective. I think that when 2020 happened and Black folks around this country were in the streets, righteously so, tearing up the streets because the police would not stop murdering people, I think you had a lot of mainstream rappers and underground rappers that kind of like, I don't want to say lip service because I don't want to assume that it was disingenuous, but everybody had like a Black Lives Matter reference in a song or whatever. But the hip hop that I grew up in was not that. These were young people who deeply believed that, South Africa shouldn't live under apartheid, that black folks and folks in Gaza, were connected, that oppressed people around the world were connected. And they said that shit in their music. And they said, famously, NWA said, fuck the police. You know what I mean? Like, these were folks who cared about this shit and they put it in the music. And I think that those of us who had the pleasure and like the privilege is what I want to say, folks who had the privilege of growing up, and kind of being young and impressionable and wanting to learn about the world. And that those were the teachers that we had, KRS-One, say what you will about KRS-One, but KRS-One, like I said, Public Enemy, Cube, Ice-T, all these folks, Paris, fucking loved Paris as a kid. These folks were young, but they were on fire and they cared about this shit. It wasn't just like careerism. You know what I mean? And I get it. You know what I mean? The music industry is squeezing people right now. And, it is hard to make money. And, I suspect I've lost like opportunities in music. My industry, as a music journalist, is being squeezed out. And I feel like maybe I've lost some opportunities, or maybe, because of something that I've said, politically or whatever. But we need musicians and journalists and DJs, who give a shit, and record collectors who give a shit. Like, it can't just be, oh, this rare record is $6,000 on Discogs. Who gives a fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like, the world is literally on fire, and, people are being killed, multiple genocides happening across the planet, oppression everywhere. Who gives a shit about how valuable a record is? Or, oh, I got the original, this is not a bootleg. Who cares? Who gives a shit? You know what I mean? So that's what I want for myself and for others, that we just care more,
Another thing I'd point out about all those rappers who had a point of view, the point is they had this interest in intellectualism, and it made me think that being smart is a good idea.
For sure.
So why don't I try and be as smart as them?
Yeah.
And that's really not existing. In fact, it's the opposite. A lot of people are getting super dumbed down.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I think there's a strong opportunity for politics, not only for the right and wrong reason, for the inspiration that you should think about shit. Yeah.
I despised school as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, I had, for various reasons, a deep aversion to authority, and I hated school. And I could have easily been a high school dropout. Like I was right there. You know what I mean? The only reason I really graduated high school is because my assistant principal, he called me in. I did something in school, and my assistant principal at my school called me in. He was like, hey, we don't want you here, and you don't want to be here. How about we do this? There's a new program where you can go to night school. You can make up all the old credits that you didn't make from being a fuck up. And you can graduate relatively on time. And I did that. I leaned into it, and I, for the grace of God, got out of high school. So, I was not a scholarly kid in that sense. But to your point about the music making you want to be smart, that shit was so fly to me as a kid, that KRS had knowledge. Rakim, you bring Rakim up, that Rakim had knowledge, and looking at these guys as a young man, I knew that intellectualism and worldliness and learning was something that I wanted to have a part of my life when I became a man. You know what I mean? I was a kid looking at that as an example. And then I had guys around my way. We grew up with Moors, people who were in the Nation of Islam, people who were scholarly from a religious perspective, but also was political. Black folks in this country, everything we do is political. You know what I'm saying? Um, it's tied into it. So, I grew up reading what the older brothers read. I grew up reading the books and the scholars that the MCs reference. If I listen to a rap song and they brought up, I don't know, like Chancellor Williams or Sheikh Anta Diop or like those like Afrocentric writers, Malefe Asante, those folks were being referenced in the hip hop culture. I wanted to read that too. And I wanted to know what was going on. I think that impulse, to be frank, is not in our culture now, underground or mainstream. It ain't everybody, obviously, but a lot of it is just it's careerism. It's like, how can I put out records and explore, my creative world, which is cool, is wonderful. I'm not saying like all your records have to be like Fear of a Black Planet, but it does feel like that political perspective has been de-incentivized in the music and in the culture.
De-incentivized, to put it lightly.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
No, well said. All very well said. Now, we've explored different parts of your life, and I learned a lot about you. I mean, I didn't realize you were a freestyler and a rapper. It all kind of makes sense now. I think you're such a great orator, such a great communicator.
Thank you.
And I saw a clip of you speaking about jazz. I was like, wow, you're really teaching me something new. So yeah,
Nice.
I think I think that's fantastic. You've really done a wide variety of things.
Yeah.
I think calling yourself a hobbyist, you are being a bit self-deprecating. You've done a lot. You've done a lot of different things. I feel like
for
you're
sure.
more than a hobby. Let's talk about making beats and music. Tell us about that area of your life.
Yeah. So like I said, as a teenager, I was a tape maker, mixtapes, but also beat tapes. I literally just digitized an old beat tape that I made in the summer of '95. My partner and I were at my mom's crib not too long ago for dinner, and as we're leaving, my mom's just like, "Here, take this." It was like a trash bag full of tapes, and one of them was like an old beat tape that I made when I was like 14 or 15. So that's something that's been a part of my life for a long time, and consistently, probably more consistently than anything else I've ever done. Um, but yeah, I made beats as a teenager, made tapes like 4 tracks, that sort of like uh underground, like super underground, to where you don't even have a studio. That kind of practice, that was my thing, and that's how I learned. Um, Really, just like hours and hours of making beats when I wasn't like out battling or running around or doing whatever. It was like dedication to like making beats, but also making mixtapes and stuff like that. And then in my 20s, um, I just kept it going. But I had a job and like a little money, um, so I could like buy more records. And that's when I've been a record collector, since I was young, but in my 20s is really, I think, when I became a digger. That's when like I started finding breaks that were being used on records that like it wasn't like a break that my brother gave me. You know what I mean? It's like I'm in thrift stores and I'm like, oh, Tribe Called Quest used this, or oh, this is that drum. You know what I mean? And this is like the early 2000s where you could still kind of come up in the thrift store. You know what I mean? Like you could find something, that's like dope for this era in Philly. I don't know about other places like with like the economics, but I was paying like a quarter for a record. Like I have quote unquote grails that I paid like a quarter, 50 cents for. You know what I mean? Just as a young digger. Um, so that was like my thing, and I was using the ASR 10 was my instrument of choice. But I could get down on the MPC or whatever. So yeah, that was the thing, and I was like making beats and digging. I also played in a psychedelic rock band like throughout my 20s. You know what I mean? So a lot of it, this is where the hobbyist part comes in to me. I was doing all of this stuff, doing a little bit of writing, um, but I worked a job. Like I just worked a 9 to 5, and on the weekends would just play like basement shows or make beats when I got off work, that sort of thing. So I wasn't at all trying to make even a dollar doing music. You know what I mean? I just um, loved it, and I was dedicated to the craft of it, and it gave me joy. Like I would work at a job that I despised. Like I used to work in offices throughout my 20s, and I remember working at this place is right outside of Philly. So I had to get up like early in the morning and go out there, and I would write little notes. uh, I hate this place. I want to leave. I hate this place. I want to leave. And I put up one in my cubicle on one day, and then I wrote another one, and then another one. And at one point, my cubicle, this is like real psycho behavior. You like as I'm thinking of it. At one point, my entire cubicle on 3 sides had these little notes that said, "I hate this place. I want to leave. I hate this place. I want to leave." And my supervisors would like come by and be like, "This fucking guy." You know what I mean? But I was miserable professionally, but I could always go home, roll a joint, throw a record on the turntable, chop it up, make a beat, and it made me feel something. Like it, you know what I mean? It was an escape from what I had to do like 9 to 5 or whatever. And it feels silly in today's environment and market to talk about how like having a job you hated it. You know what I'm saying? Like it feels like a little silly and tone deaf. But that's what it was. This is like in the 2000s. So yeah, beat making really might be the thing. I try not to have like a hierarchy of interests. Like I love all of it. Beat making might be the thing that's like closest to my heart emotionally. It's something about um taking a record and you know a jazz thing, funk, whatever, and like making it into something else, something from our culture, from like a hip hop perspective. I'll never get sick of that. I'll never ever get sick of that. So it's like a not to be dramatic, but it is like a healing thing. I absolutely adore making beats. I don't get to do it as much recently. Like I did my last record that came out in 2025. But I need to get back into making something.
I love the passion. And when I look at any of these things, music, writing, rapping, it can be a career. If it is a career for someone, that doesn't mean the career lasts for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right? The average length of a music career is not that long.
For sure.
And I think it's great if you can enjoy it for what it is. And if you make it a career, great. But that is for a small subset of people. I liked to play basketball when I was young. I thought I was pretty good. I spent a lot of time doing it. I'm 5'6".
There you
and
go.
yeah, only certain people make the NBA. Some of these things are art form or game or things that people do for free. Not only for free, sometimes you pay to do it.
For sure.
Right? There's an investment in music and beats and equipment. So I think there's no shame in doing something for a hobby, and anything that you make more than that, like real or in society, put it out, it should be applauded. And even people who never put anything out and they just love something, that's good too. You need everything.
Yeah. Some things are just for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's as long as you actually love it, that's all I really care about. Like if people have this genuine feeling towards music and art and culture, that's really where I am mentally.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've done so many things. I feel like I'm doing each phase of your career a disservice.
Dude,
The best way to get to know someone is to talk music. So I'm
right.
gonna switch to everyone's favorite segment of the show. It's called Drop a Gem on Them. It's a word association game. You tell me what comes to mind. Can be a personal feeling, an anecdote, a story, really anything.
Hmm.
Some are songs, some are artists, some are just things.
Yeah.
Avant-Garde Album by Don Cherry and John Coltrane.
Yeah. Um, I love this record. I just did a live event at a venue called Solar Myth in Philadelphia, where the great drummer Chad Taylor and his ensemble covered the entire John Coltrane and Don Cherry record, the Avant-Garde. So we talked about it, talked a lot about uh, Coltrane's history in Philadelphia, but also uh, Coltrane's engagement with this new wave of music, quote unquote, free jazz or the avant garde. Uh, so that record was recorded in 1960. Uh, that's significant because in 1959, a year prior, Ornette Coleman and Don Cherry came to New York, and they had their famous residency at the Five Spot Club in New York, and that introduced free jazz. This new concept of jazz that wasn't beholden to standard rhythms or standard harmonic context. It was a more open ended way of improvising and creating this music. That that residency in 1959 with Ornette Coleman introduced this concept to the larger jazz world. In 1959, New York City, Manhattan specifically, was the epicenter of jazz and jazz innovation. And this guy, Ornette Coleman, who's from Texas, spent time playing in vaudeville, like played with one of the oldest or the oldest existing vaudeville troupe, but then went out to the West Coast and completely turned jazz inside out. Him, Don Cherry, and all of those folks came and set it off in New York. And Coltrane heard this, and Coltrane was already that guy. He was already, one of the giants of jazz at that point. But this record, the Avant-Garde, it's essentially an Ornette Coleman record with Coltrane replacing Ornette. So he's playing with, Charlie Hayden, Don Cherry, all these folks who were on those early Coltrane records or Ornette Coleman records. And it's really an example of a veteran immersing himself in the new direction of the music. All of these guys were 10 or so years younger than John Coltrane at this point. And he really dove into this new sound and this new movement, and it changed his music moving forward. Everything that he did after is like pre, 1960 and then post 1960. Everything that he did after was colored by this interaction and this music that they made together.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing
Thank
that
you.
context. I'm a massive John Coltrane fan. I can
Same.
never stop learning about him. I've read multiple books.
Mhm.
That particular piece of information I did not know,
Yeah.
and it enhances my appreciation.
For sure.
Next song, a little bit of a different direction here.
Mhm.
By the way, sorry, I keep muting. I'm realizing on this show that I may be getting sick. I was trying to deny it
Oh
the
no.
whole time. It's like, look, I don't get sick. I have like this mental thing, like I don't get sick.
Yeah.
But it may be possible. So, when you see me mute and blowing my nose, that's what's going on.
I understand.
All right. Next song, totally different. Crew, Just Another Case.
Yeah.
What does that bring up for you?
Just Another Case reminds me of high school. You know what I mean? That record, and it's interesting because we talked a little earlier I said something to the effect of how much closer underground aesthetics were to like the mainstream in rap music in the 90s. And I think this record is an example of that. Def Jam put this record out. Def Jam was huge at the time. And I don't know if those guys in Crew, I think they might have had some kind of affiliation with like Bad Boy, like on the production side. Um, but yeah, it's just but you know, if you were to play this record for anybody right now, they would their mind, even if they didn't have the language for it, they would think, "Oh, that's like an underground rap record. It feels like a backpacker record." You know what I mean? But yeah, that song is an all-time classic. I still play it in DJ sets, and it's interesting. Before COVID happened, I was doing a lot of stuff, gigs where basically I'm like background music, you know, as a DJ, DJing at like a bowling alley, or, you know, like a store would open. They would pay me a nice amount of money to go be the DJ, like playing stuff in the background. That record always works. Like that kind of like bossa nova sounding like guitar sample, and you know the flow is once upon a time, let's see if I remember back in January. No, chill, it was December. Like it has kind of like a bouncy, like sing-songy feel to it. That record always works, and it works in definitely in hip hop rooms and like with like heads. Um, but it works in like quote unquote like mainstream rooms too. You know what I mean? Like where people aren't, you know, maybe not aren't as knowledgeable about like the canon of like underground hip hop or rare rap or whatever. You know, it's not heads that you're DJing for. It's just like, you know, quote unquote like regular folks. That record hits anywhere. So that's what I think about. I think about high school because it was rocking, you know, they were playing that on the radio. You know what I mean? Like that record was rocking everywhere. But then now I think about it from a DJ context, how it's a tool that I can use in multiple places, which any DJ will tell you that's important.
Yeah. Great song. Definitely gets people going. It's got such a good feeling. Remix, Slick Rick.
Slick Rick on it. Yeah. We hadn't heard much from Slick Rick at that point. You know what I mean? As
You've been
Slick
away.
Rick popping
You've been
in.
away.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, he killed it on that. And that legitimized the song.
Right.
To me, it felt like it came out of nowhere, and this song's amazing. It's a hit. And then Slick Rick on it, it was like a great appearance.
Yeah.
Produced by a producer named Yogi, who did go on to work with the Hitman.
Yogi, yeah. Yeah.
Another artist, I don't say a couple songs, but I'll say the artist first. J. Paul, BTSTU.
Yes.
And I'll say another song off this mysterious album, Crush, which was a remake. Any feelings does that bring up for you?
Absolutely. So, J. Paul is one of my favorite musicians. Like I literally like the Paul Institute where you sign up and you get like the text like, "Oh, J. Paul's dropping something tonight." I'm like signed up to get those texts. You know what I mean?
I gotta get on it.
Yeah, they had like, this was years ago. They had like a list that you could sign up for. You like plug your phone number in, and whenever they drop something on the label, you know, they'll shoot you a text. But J. Paul, one of my favorite musicians, and how I've discovered his music, a good friend of mine, my man, Alat Momin, who, DJ Octopus, he used to be in the group Dalek. And I'm friends with Will from Dalek. Like, they're folks whose music I loved. And then I got the pleasure to meet and work with them. So I've like released a record on their label, Deadverse Recordings. But, you know, I was just a fan, you know. I think their first record came out when I was like a junior in high school. And me and a couple of my homies, we loved it because we loved that it was a rap record, but it was also noise. You know what I mean? Like it had that experimental, like noisy sound to it. So I ended up becoming friends with them and working with them. And how I heard J. Paul was through a lap. So we did a show in Brooklyn. This was when I was still doing like shows as an MC. This might have been this is around when BTSU came out, so it might have been like late 2000s. So I'm performing at this club in Brooklyn. I'm like giving it my all on the mic, and then a lap takes over and he's DJing and he's just playing stuff and like playing crazy shit. And that song came on, and it's like the little vocal harmony. I won't do the falsetto, but he comes in. He's like, "Don't fuck with me, don't fuck with
It
me."
is M.
He
So M.
comes in, and the beat comes in, and you know, Jay Dilla. I think when Jay Dilla died, he left a lot of energy in the world. So this is the time when, Flying Lotus is coming out. You know, you go on MySpace, you would hear like DiBiase, Raj G, all of that like West Coast beat stuff that, took a lot of influence from Dilla or was inspired by Dilla. I know that LA has its own like parallel instrumental hip hop history. So it's not all, Dilla's influence, it's other stuff. That made up that whole gumbo of like LA, instrumental hip hop. But that J. Paul record felt like some West Coast take on like Dilla's sound. And I remember I ran across the dance floor. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of this bar we were in, but I ran across the dance floor. I ran up on a lap. I was like, "Yo, what are you playing?" And he's like, "Yo, bro, a lap's like real, like he got a lot of energy. Is my guy." And he's like, "Yo," he's like, "You never heard J. Paul?" And I'm like, "Fuck no, I ain't ever hear this. What is this?" It's like, this is crazy. He's like, "Yo, it's like this Indian dude, man. He's like Prince meets Dilla." I remember him saying that. I remember being like, "Oh, so we have a new giant on the scene." You know what I mean? So I went and like found his music, like probably still on MySpace at that point. But yeah, just one, J. Paul's a top tier songwriter, right? Like full stop. And I love everything from that camp, his brother, AK Paul, Fabiana Palladino. I love everything that like those guys touch. I'm immediately buying it. I'm immediately playing it on the radio and my DJ sets. And J. Paul, I think, reconciled that Dilla sound, that kind of Dilla swing hip hop perspective with like the quote unquote like bedroom pop perspective. So, when I listen to him, I hear, Dilla, but I also hear Battle Cat, Prince, Todd Rundgren, all of this stuff that's hip hop, but it's also soul, it's psychedelic, it's so many different things that I love tied up in this music, and the songs are killer. You know what I mean? So BTSU, Crush is a cover, but he does it in a real beautiful way. Jasmine, I absolutely love. He has a song called He, which is one of my favorite songs. I don't have too many people that I'm like, "Yo, I would love to meet this cat." You know what I mean? I'm just kind of whatever with that. I would love to meet that cat. You know what I mean? Just like to let him know, like, "Yo, your music, is really something special." And I'm sure he knows that already, but yeah, I'm like a super, super fan.
Very well said. I like the way you mentioned some of the influences and described it. And he did it without biting.
Yes.
So all those links, they are there 100%, but he kind of made it his own without being so derivative. You're like, "Oh, this is another Dilla like child," of
Yeah,
which there were many. And
for
that's
sure.
fine. It's like a genre of music.
Hmm.
He did this shit in his own way, and taking it to UK, doing it in his own style is fucking amazing. Um, a lot of mystery around how that music was distributed, kind of was leaked and he
Yep.
wasn't happy. And the demo, it was like in demo form, is kind of recorded in this rough way.
Hmm.
I thought it was amazing. And also it's kind of hard to even download for a very long period of time.
Yeah, yeah.
It was very just hard to access.
It's hard to
I had a
find.
friend who had on a CD. He's like, look, I got it for you.
Oh,
And
snap. Nice.
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's fantastic music. Really great. And it's kind of like when you know someone who's into J. Paul, you know they're on it, right? Like
Yeah, good
they're
taste. Yeah.
putting in the
Yeah.
work. Put in the work. All right. Next song. Prince, all-time great artist, comes up as a recurring theme on this show. This song I'll bring up. Ballad of Dorothy Parker.
Yeah. One of those songs that I feel like about a Dorothy Parker kind of I believe the songs can give us hints about what is going to happen in the future, like not actual events, but what sound is going to be like in the future. Ballad of Dorothy Parker definitely feels like it's kind of tipping us off to J. Paul. You know what I mean? Like it feels
You
like,
probably listen to that all the time.
you know what I'm saying? Like it's like a two-way conversation. You know what I mean? But yeah, I adore that song. And Ballad of Dorothy Parker might have been one of the first Prince songs that I really fell in love with as a young person that wasn't like a Prince radio hit. You know what I mean? I grew up on Prince's music, like literally like the beginning of 1999, like feels like my childhood. Like I heard that shit everywhere, as a kid in the 80s. So that music is like imprinted in my DNA, in my ears in a lot of ways. But Ballad of Dorothy Parker might have been one of the first songs from Prince that I really locked in with. And it was like, oh, this isn't like just, not dismissing like the radio stuff, but this is like something different. Um, Such an understated song. I love songs that kind of paint like a scene out of a film or a play. You know what I mean? Like those like hyper descriptive songs. I love that like that kind of warbly like keyboard chords, like those parts. You know what I mean? And it also feels like I don't know if they did that like recording the electric piano and then doing like the Hendrix thing where they used to like make the tape warble like manually. I don't know if they did that or if it's like a keyboard with like a pitch wheel. I don't know. I don't know how they're doing that effect, but it kind of feels otherworldly. The lyric is very grounded. It's very much like a scene from a film that he's walking you through. But then the music feels like warbly and kind of off a little bit. A Joni Mitchell reference, which I love. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Ballad of Dorothy Parker is ill. Prince was so ill, man. Like I see younger people who weren't around in the 80s, and I was a little kid in the 80s, so I wasn't outside. But I see younger people kind of downplaying Prince, like say in favor of Michael Jackson. That's been like a discourse on like Twitter and Threads lately, where people are like, "Oh, well, Prince, he ain't really have it like Mike and all of that." It's like, bro, you don't even understand. Like the two of them are the 80s. You know what I mean? Like they ruled their era, but also, Run DMC ruled that era in a different way. Punk and like metal also ruled that era. I think that we lose nuance as we get further away from these events and from these eras. And I think that in the rush to create these big, all-encompassing narratives about music and culture and art, we lose like a lot of the wrinkles and a lot of the real understanding of what was going on. You know what I mean? You said, if somebody listens to J. Paul, they're on it. If you downplay Prince, I know you're a fucking heathen with no
Yeah.
culture. You know what I'm
Get
saying?
the fuck
Like
out. You don't know shit. You're immediately like dismissed.
you disqualified
Yeah, yeah.
if you downplay Prince, even if he's not for you. Yeah,
It is ridiculous. Well, the internet has many good things. We're talking on the internet right now. I
yeah,
learn a ton about music from the internet.
for sure.
Uh, you got to pick and choose, right? I'd say when we're talking Michael Jackson and Prince, we're talking around all-time greats, and you don't have to choose a favorite.
Yeah,
And at that stage, you're at like, what do you like, chocolate or vanilla? It doesn't matter. They're the
yeah,
best. And Prince is certainly more experimental, risk-taking. He also has much more music,
yeah.
much more. And Ballad of Dorothy Parker, I really loved how you described it. And it is, for sonic reasons and otherwise, a beat digger classic,
Mm-hmm.
right? Anyone who DJs in this world, it is just one of those songs, and everyone loves it, even though it's not a pop hit. It's an album cut,
Mm-hmm.
a very unusual song at that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Strange and beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Gonna bring up a song, a little bit more of a pop hit. Speaking of Michael Jackson, Hey Lover.
Uh-huh.
LL Cool J featuring Boys to Men.
Yeah.
Produced by Tone and Poke.
Who
Which
I think the Trackmasters get a bad rap. You know what I mean? Especially in like more like backpack, like underground circles, you know, and I get it. I was there in that era. And, you know, I remember folks would go, if they needed like a radio hit, they would go get, you know, the Trackmasters. But the Trackmasters have, you know, no pun intended, a fantastic track record for making incredible rap records. You know what I'm saying? Like producing like dope shit. And Hey Lover's ill. And, you know, Boys to Men were on fire in this era. You know, I wrote a book, Boys to Men 40th anniversary celebration, which was you know, published in 2025. That's really like, I humbly think like the most comprehensive history of Boyz II Men's career. But yeah, I do write about Hey Lover. The story goes that, you know, they wanted to do a collaboration with LL, and LL drove to Pennsylvania. It was Boyz II Men had a studio right outside of Philly, and LL like drove in and recorded that song, you know, in this area. Interesting enough, that studio that Boyz II Men uh, owned in the mid '90s, the building used to be a munitions factory, so they would make arms and ammunition for the Civil War back in the day, and then somebody bought it later and turned it into a recording studio, and then Boyz II Men bought it off of them, and they would just record stuff in there. Britney Spears, a very young, like pre-fame Britney Spears, recorded a demo album in that same studio that Boyz II Men owned, and the great Philly R&B singer Vivian Green was like writing songs for young Britney at that time. So this is, you know, it's ill to see, you know, how huge LL was, how huge Boyz II Men was, and to think about, you know, Boyz II Men in particular wanting their own space to record. You know what I mean? Like wanting, having that foresight, like, yo, we can like be super comfortable, record and knock out all of this stuff. And Hey Lover is like the product of that. You know what I mean? A classic record, still works if you're playing like, you know, a little chill set and like with some like 90s rap and R&B influences, you know, that beautiful Michael Jackson sample. Like, Hey Lover is like top notch. I don't know, you know, it don't matter if you like, you know, radio rap or like poppier stuff or whatever, like R&B meets hip hop or whatever. That's a good fucking song.
Hell yeah, it's a good song.
Yeah.
And I like the Trackmasters a lot. You're right. They are a bit underappreciated in certain
Yeah.
circles. And yeah, I'd say when it comes to the underground pop thing, I obviously I like underground music.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole show is about beat digging. But even when all that stuff was coming out with Bad Boy, I was massively into it.
Yeah.
A lot, a lot. And I liked all the sample based hits. I still had my point of view, like, hey, this is too pop versus not. But I liked a ton of stuff on Bad Boy. And one of my earlier kind of bigger guests was Nashim Myrick. We were in
Nice.
touch.
Nice.
And he was like, yo, what are you talking about? Music is supposed to be popular. It's a business. Now, is it dope? That's up to you,
Yeah.
right? That's you.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who's done all kinds of crazy hits, TONY. Like he's done
Love
underground
TONY.
pop music. He's like, yo, it's supposed to make money. And that's how I look at it. And sampling is a huge part of making it good again. He had, it was so clear in his mind. That's the life he led. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to argue with someone. That's exactly what happened for him. So.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that with like the whole like rhetorical divide between underground rap and mainstream rap in the 90s in particular, I think that there was this idea that one is twofold. I think that there was this idea that some of those folks who were making those big rap records, like radio rap records, were kind of begrudgingly doing it, like, oh, I got to loop another record from the 80s, oh man, and make another $1 million. Just, I'm really, but I got to feed my family. Or that they were doing it out of malice. Like, oh yeah, we're going to make so much money. I'm going to loop a song from the 80s and piss off all the underground people, and we're going to make so much money. And it was neither of that. You know what I mean? Like those folks, some of a few folks that I've like talked to who were like in that orbit, it's like you said, those folks were working musicians and producers who had a job. They were like, yo, all right. You know what I mean? I don't look at it any differently than say like the Wrecking Crew in the 60s who were playing on like all those big Phil Spector hits and whatever came through the door at Capitol or whatever it was, and they just played on it, and they went home. They cashed their checks and went home. They loved the music, but it was also a job, and they also understood what they needed to do and how to do it. I think that the underground kind of gets caught up, and I'm a backpacker at heart, like straight up.
I mean, half the shit we talked about is quite obscure.
You know what I'm saying? And I love pop music too. Yeah. But yeah, that was like, we thought like that in high school. Like these guys were like the evil empire making pop music. It's like, nah, they're hip hop cats who were making something that they knew the streets would like and they knew that the radio would like.
Speaking of underground, Casual versus Saphir and Hobo Junction battle.
Yeah.
What comes to mind?
Yeah.
Actually, it's so obscure. Why don't you just explain a little bit about who Casual is and who Saphir is? Like, I cannot assume that everyone knows who that is.
Absolutely. Casual, an MC out of Oakland, famously a member of the Hieroglyphics crew with Delta Funky Homo Sapien, Pep Love, Souls of Mischief, all of those folks. And Saphir, another MC from Oakland. Oakland folks, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think Casual and them are from East Oakland. Maybe Saphir's from West Oakland. I could be super, super wrong. But rest in peace. Rest in peace to Saphir. Saphir, was down with a crew called Hobo Junction. And Casual and Saphir were tight enough. I don't know if they considered themselves friends, but they were tight enough to where Saphir appears on Casual's first album, Fear Itself. He does like first he talks shit for a while, like a little interlude is like, oh, you thought I was gonna rhyme, and then he comes in schizophrenic tenant #1 when it comes to housing arousing.
The song is called The Bullshit.
The Bullshit, yeah.
Amazing.
It's crazy.
He really talked shit for like 16 bars of like, oh, I didn't even know he was gonna rap. Then he starts rapping and he's killing it. He has his own style. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? This is the best.
And when Saphir passed away, I wrote a piece on my Substack about Saphir and Ornette Coleman. I think it was like Saphir and Ornette Coleman, The Art of Being Ill, I think is what I called it. But Saphir, when we talk about Ornette Coleman and, you know, that famous residency in 1959 and really breaking the rhythmic and harmonic rules of what jazz was, Saphir was in a lot of ways Ornette Coleman's equivalent for his own generation and his own culture. Because I know I was like crazy into hieroglyphics as a kid, and I loved Casual. I love Souls of Mischief, and I love Dell. Casual is probably my favorite as a kid out of that whole crew. And when I heard Casual's record and I heard Saphir, I was like, yo, who is this cat? Like, what? You know what I mean? When it comes to housing, arousing the intellect with introspect, like he was killing it. And it wasn't like, he wasn't conforming to like a strict rhythmic pattern. It was a little off, but it was also funky. So the story goes that Saphir did that guest spot on Casual's album, and Casual was supposed to, in turn, do a guest spot on Saphir's record, Boxcar Sessions. Classic rap record. So something happened where Casual didn't end up on the record. Saphir, this is all the story. I'm getting this like super secondhand. Saphir felt slighted, and word got back to each other that there was static. So they were like, yo, let's battle. You know what I mean? And they had multiple battles. And this is in the era, like we talked earlier about battling. This was in the era where you were going off the head. There were a few cats doing like written stuff in battles, but mainly you were going off the head battling people, you know, in the mid 90s. Like that was the wave. I don't know if it was the influence of, you know, Project Blowed in LA. Probably, you know what I mean? But the word was, wherever you was at, if you was battling somebody, you had to come off the top. That was just the standard. So famously, Saphir and Casual, and by proxy, Hieroglyphics and Hobo Junction battled each other on the Wake Up Show. And this battle was mythic. I don't think I actually heard it until after it had happened, because the Wake Up Show ended up being syndicated when I was in high school, and they would play it on Philly radio. I think it was 103 point, not 103.3. That was Princeton. One of the Philly stations would get like the Wake Up Show syndicated on Friday nights. But I think this was after the Saphir and Casual battle. So I heard the tape later, but just the notion that Hyro and Casual and Saphir and Hobo Junction were battling, I was crazy excited about this as a kid, because like they were two of my favorite MCs, you know what I mean? So, you know, you can listen to the battle on YouTube, and a brother, I can't think of his name, did a really dope documentary that's on YouTube, I think, about the entire battle. But yeah, they're just like going crazy on each other off the dome and like talking shit like in the studio. At one point, Saphir, I think Saphir's dissing Tajay. But at one point he says something like, you grew up in the suburbs with mom and dad. You was hanging with wingdings named Muffy and Brad. Like, yeah, but he put on like he put on kind of like the white man voice, like mom and dad and Muffy and Brad. Like he's like going crazy on these niggas, and it's all off the top. It's so crazy. It's such a good battle. It's not as clean as battles now. I think, you know, especially young people who grew up on, you know, like the smack battles and that stuff, that kind of culture is like hyper written, where you're like really writing and rehearsing. You may listen to a battle like, a Stretch and Bob radio battle or like a Wake Up Show battle, where there's a battle. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but a guy named Mike T, I think battled MC Juice on the Wake Up Show back in the day, and they're all going off the top. It might be weird for somebody who grew up on the written style of battling to see. It might not be as clean, but I would say check it out because the energy is crazy and it's funny as hell.
Yeah, it's crazy energy. It's crazy energy. And Hyro was super hot at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
And they were really great. They were making their own scene, their own name. And Saphir with, I believe, Battle Drill just came out around that time. And his song Battle Drill off Boxcar Session that you mentioned is amazing. And this guy was had such a booming voice and such a cool style. He had his own slang. It seemed like even different than Hyro. It's like whatever neighborhood he's from, he had his own shit going on. And he didn't seem to give a fuck. I'll also say that. He seemed like the toughest dude in the world.
Yeah.
And it was so amazing. And that battle, I think they were actually like, not that I support violence. I feel like they were actually gonna fight. I mean, we're thinking about like 19-year-old, 20-year-old teenagers in a room like yelling at each other. Yeah, a lot's gonna happen. Yeah. I appreciated everything you shared about that. It was a very cool time. Very cool time.
Yeah.
You're such a music lover. You have a great variety of taste of many of those things we've touched on today. Paint your ideal listening session, whatever that means to you.
Honestly, ideal. Okay, because I was gonna say I'll listen in any given circumstance, but you said ideal. So, you know what I've been enjoying lately? You can't really see the room I'm in, but I have records down here, records back here, records behind me, records over here across this wall. I've been really enjoying getting up in the morning. I'm a morning person and a night person. So I don't get as much sleep as I should. But I wake up earlier than everybody in the house. So I like get up and I'll come in here and I'll just like listen to stuff. You know what I mean? Like I have a long bin right here next to me of like stuff that like recent digs. So sometimes I'll come in here and this is like, 5 a.m. I'll just come in and I'll sit. Sometimes I'll start by sitting just quiet, like just, with nothing on. But then once the quiet kind of like cleanses me in a nice way that I feel, I'll just like put on a record and sit in here and just like listen to stuff. Maybe I'll go through emails, or maybe not. Maybe I'll just sit in here, and if I have a gig where I'm like playing records, I'll have my record bags and stuff or a big bin that I brought, and I'll just like sort records. I'll put records back while one is playing, so just, anything chill, where I can just kind of like listen and appreciate, that's ideal. But then also on the flip side, I just went to an event in Philly. My good friend Duji, he started a series of events, but really a community called Vinyl Tap 215. And, Vinyl Tap, you could go and you could see it's all like, open, like people sign up and they come and they bring their records and they spin, usually free events. And you can come and see somebody who tours around the world DJing, who's been DJing for 30 plus years, playing right next to somebody who just started collecting records. You know what I mean? It's a super inclusive community. And, those sessions are always super fun. You know what I mean? We'll pull up to like a record store or a comic book shop, and it's just DJs all day. And it's people like myself who maybe have a lot of records, or people who have way more records than me. People who literally just have, a couple bins of records in their collection, but they're excited about playing this stuff. So I love those sessions. Three DJs from the Vinyl Tap community just had an event the other day. My homie Maddie, L'Oreal, and DJ Coda did an event at a venue not far from here. It was 3 women DJs spinning, and a bunch of the homies were there. We were like chilling, like folks from the Vinyl Tap community, and they were just vibing out, like on the decks, just like playing dope shit all night. You know what I mean? So like stuff like that's ideal too, where there's friends and there's fam around, and we're like geeking out and like sharing in the experience of music. I don't know that I have a single ideal situation, but stuff like that is cool. Quiet by myself, also a little less quiet and surrounded with friends. Either one is good for me.
I think that all makes sense. Well, for this future phase of your life, I wish you nothing but success.
Thank you.
Whether it's alone or with people, I see nothing but happiness for you, John.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for your time, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right. Peace.
All right.
Just give me 30 seconds of your time. Firstly, a huge thank you for checking out the show. This started off as an idea in my mind. To see the growth and the support from the beat digging community from around the world has been fantastic. Secondly, if you support what we do here, take a moment and join the 19% of listeners and subscribe on this app. It makes a huge difference. And my promise to you is to grow this show to make it even more of what you love. More guests, more interesting conversation, more beat digging knowledge. We appreciate your support. Peace.